Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvina Aditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all beings everywhere. So welcome and good evening. Hari Om Namaste. We are, of course, studying Swami Vivekananda's Jnana Yoga. We're a bit into his chapter 12, which is titled The Cosmos, or Cosmos, the Microcosm. Before we start, are there any questions or comments? Anything left over from last week or from anything else that's on your mind that you would like to ask or offer? Okay. The light which shines through the mind is not its own. The light that shines through the mind is not its own. Whose is it then? It must belong to that which has as its own essence, and as has it, it must belong to that which has it as its own essence, and as such can never decay or die, never become stronger or weaker. It is self-luminous. It is luminosity itself. It cannot be that the soul knows. It is knowledge. It cannot be that the soul has existence, but it is existence. It cannot be that the soul is happy. It is happiness itself. That which is happy has borrowed its happiness. That which has knowledge has received its knowledge. And that which has relative existence has only a reflected existence. Wherever there are qualities, these qualities have been reflected upon the substance. But the soul has not knowledge, existence, but the soul has not knowledge, existence, and blessedness as its qualities. They are the essence of the soul. Now, because this is such a key principle of what the Swami is talking about, let's pause and see if there are any questions about this business. Of course, what he's translating is the Sanskrit term Satchitananda, existence, knowledge, bliss itself. And he's saying that the soul has not these qualities, it is these qualities. And that means both as Nirguna Atman, Atman being the term for the soul that he's translating, Nirguna Atman and Saguna Atman. And he says that as Saguna Atman, these are reflected on the substance that takes shape according to the intentions of Atman, the human form and everything that's attendant on it. Any questions or comments? Anything to contribute from your own wisdom and experience, or anything to ask? Okay. Wherever there are qualities, these qualities have been reflected upon the substance, the soul that wherever there are qualities, these qualities have been reflected on the substance being that which we experience as this action and experience suit with all of its five organs of action, 5 organs of perception, and mind. So they have a reflected existence. Wherever there are qualities, these qualities have been reflected upon the substance, but the soul has not knowledge, existence, and blessedness as its qualities. They are the essence of the soul. Again, it may be asked, why shall we take this for granted? Why shall we admit that the soul has knowledge, blessedness, existence as its essence, and has not borrowed them? It may be argued, why not say that the soul is luminosity? The soul is blessedness. The soul is knowledge. I'm sorry. Why not say that the soul's luminosity, the soul's blessedness, the soul's knowledge are borrowed in the same way as the luminosity of the body is borrowed from the mind? The fallacy of arguing in this way will be that there will be no limit from whom were these borrowed. If we say from some other source, the same question will be asked again. So at last we shall have to come to the one who is self-luminous. To make matters short, then. The logical way is to stop where we get self-luminosity and proceed no further. We see then that this human being is composed first of this external covering, the body. Secondly, the finer body, consisting of mind, intellect, and egoism, ahamkara. Behind them is the real self of man. We have seen that all the qualities and powers of the gross body are borrowed from the mind, and the mind, the finer body, borrows its powers and luminosity from the soul, standing behind. Now you may be familiar with the 5 koshas, the 5 sheaths or coverings. So there's the food body, the gross outer body, the energy body, the mind body, the intellect body, and then the causal body, that which causes all of this, rest of this to shine, exist. So that's what he's talking about here, these five coverings. And the mind, intellect, and causal body, or ego, is what transmigrates from human form to human form, or for that matter, to some other form. But once having reached human form, it rarely takes another form, we're told. So any comments or questions? Anything to contribute or anything to ask about what's been said so far?
What transmigrates is the Atman, correct?
No, the Atman does not transmigrate here. The Atman is ever existent. It is primary. It is consciousness itself. It is primary. It is not local. And so it is ever existent. And the human form, so to speak, takes shape around this inseparable but seemingly separate being, a little blue being the size of a thumb, say the Upanishads, that is, as I said, inseparable, just as if you pulled a handkerchief up through you held a handkerchief like this and pulled it up like this. What you see pulled up seems to be separate, but it's actually part of the handkerchief that is below your hand. Magicians do this. Just imagine that handkerchief extending in every direction, limitlessly. So the Atman does not transmigrate. The Atman takes the mind, the intellect, and the sense of separate being, egoism, ahamkara, these reflected things, and wears them, so to speak, as a body. Sri Ramakrishna said, just a pillowcase about the body. So the Atman does not transmigrate. The Atman is ever existing, eternal, in that sense, eternal, infinite, and changeless. When it wears a human form, it expresses attributes and so becomes saguna Atman. And these are reflected in the sheaths, the five sheaths. Thanks for the question, Brahmadas. That's exactly what we want to be clear on. The Atman is primary. It is not local. It seems to be local, just as there seem to be those individuals that we see on the screen this evening. Anything else?
So, unless one gets to realization, the subtle body will transmigrate. Does
No,
each.
it's liberate. realization is not, pardon me for interrupting, Swam, but I don't want to go too much further before that's correct. Realization is not required for liberation. Liberation from from taking another body does not require nirvikalpa samadhi. It is by the grace of the Divine Mother, Sri Ramakrishna says, and that's what it says in the Chandi. She bestows both enjoyment, that is to say, this experience of being human, and liberation. But you do not have to have realization. So, having interrupted you, I'm sorry, but I thought we needed to get that out of the way right away. Is there anything else?
No, thank you. That definitely helps and is very reassuring that if we pray really, really with earnestness to the chosen ideal and Sri Ramakrishna, Sharda Devi, and we can get liberation even though we haven't realized in this lifetime. Is that
Well, yes, and Sri Ramakrishna says, I've prepared a place for you to go, which of course now is called Ramakrishna Loka. I've prepared a place for you to go to finish the task of realization. And so that's where you go. And it is part of the abode of the saints, or the solar path. And so your words about the earnest prayer, I mean, we read about it and heard about it last night from Holy Mother. She was very clear and very reassuring about this. Realization is when realization or kaivalya, independence, is achieved, there is no more existence of any kind when that full realization is achieved. That which has been influenced by and created by the three gunas dissolves back into the gunas, and that which was Atman returns to its true original state or nature. And so there's no more manifestation of any kind.
Thank you.
Anything else from anyone?
Brother Shankara, I have a doubt here.
Yes.
When the body dies, the soul goes into some other body. It takes, so isn't that true?
It may take on another body. That's what Sri Krishna says in chapters 2 and 3 of the Gita. But then later on he says, it's not necessary. If you come to me, he says.
That's right.
And it's the same voice speaking that is speaking as mother in the Chandi. It's exactly the same voice. It's just, as Sri Ramakrishna says, these divine beings take these various forms because of the love and the desire of the devotees. So if you go to this higher state that doesn't require taking human form,
Anymore.
it is, of course, the subtle body that is going there. Otherwise, there would be nothing to learn with, nothing to grow till it's uncontainable.
Okay.
This is what the yogis tell us, that as you learn and you grow, you become uncontainable. you become illimitable or independent of all limitation.
See, that means it's a self-realized soul, completely self-realized soul. Is that what it is?
Well, that's the goal, dear. That's what I said. You go to this higher abode that doesn't require taking a gross form,
That's okay.
but you haven't yet achieved realization.
Sure.
So when you achieve full realization, then you're no longer containable
That's
within that which is produced by the gunas.
Okay.
You share the divine being's omniscience, omnipotence, and omnipresence. And that's very clearly explained in chapter 4 of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras.
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
And therefore, in Swami Prabhavananda's How to Know God and Swami Vivekananda's Raja Yoga.
That's right. Thank you so much for the clarification.
Anything else, dears? So I'll just read this again so that behind them, the mind, intellect, and egoism, sense of separate self, behind them is the real self of man. We have seen that all qualities and powers of the gross body are borrowed from the mind, and the mind, the finer body, borrows its powers and luminosity from the soul standing behind. And this is that inmost sheath. Behind it is something that does not exist in a relative sense, it exists in the absolute sense, is the Atman or soul, but it is the luminosity from which all else is borrowed. And so the luminosity gives light to the finer body. And it says the finer body borrows its powers and luminosity from the soul standing behind. A great many questions now arise about the nature of this soul. If the existence of the soul is drawn from the argument that it is self-luminous, that knowledge, existence, blessedness are its essence, it naturally follows that this soul cannot have been created. A self-luminous existence, independent of any other existence, kaivalya, a self-luminous existence, independent of any other existence, could never have been the outcome of anything. It always existed. There was never a time when it did not exist, because if the soul did not exist, where was time? Time is in the soul. It is when the soul reflects its powers on the mind, and the mind thinks that time comes. I'm going to read that again. It's so important. A self-luminous existence, independent of any other existence, could never have been the outcome of anything. It always existed. There was never a time when it did not exist, because if the soul did not exist, where was time? Time is in the soul. It is when the soul reflects its powers on the mind and the mind thinks that time comes. When there was no soul, certainly there was no thought, and without thought there was no time. How can the soul, therefore, be said to be existing in time, when time itself exists in the soul? It has neither birth nor death, but is passing through all these various stages. It is manifesting slowly and gradually from lower to higher, and so on. It is expressing its own grandeur, working through the mind on the body, and through the body, it is grasping the external world and understanding it. It takes up a body and uses it. And when that body has failed and is used up, it takes another body. And so it goes. Now, it takes another body as long as it has not achieved liberation. Liberation, that's why I don't want any confusion here. It will take up another body if it wishes to. If instead it wishes to be free, if instead the second grace is there, that yearning for liberation, then it need not take up another body. As you go through the process of learning what liberation is and how to gain it. Any comment or question, any doubt or clarification needed about this?
So the yearning for liberation, it is strong enough, but when we are still in the worldly life, I mean, every once in a while, desires and all those things do creep up, fears, anxieties. But if we still earnestly pray that, yes, I'm having these desires, but I really do not want another life, is that qualify
Yes,
for yearning?
precisely, dear.
Okay.
All of these things are part of your prarabdha karma. All of these things where all of these samskaras are in your subtle body, in your mind, and the gunas brush up against them like breezes brushing up against wind chimes. And so they create effects. We witness the effects and we say, oh, these effects are here, Lord, or Mother, or whoever it is to whom you pray. These effects are here, but it's not what I want. I no longer want this. I no longer want to be entangled in this. So please set me free. Grant me liberation. And Sri Ramakrishna says again and again in the Gospel that it is Mother who holds the keys, and she indeed will answer your prayer. I mean, that's how Sri Ramakrishna speaks of it. Vivekananda is speaking of it somewhat differently here, but it's the same message.
Thank you.
I encourage any of you who have any doubts about the power of these samskaras and your prarabdha karma. I encourage any of you who have any concerns or doubts about this to read the last two chapters of the Vivekachudamani, the Crest Jewel of Discrimination, by Adi Shankaracharya. You don't need to read any commentary about it. You can read Swami Prabhavananda's translation that just simply translates what Shankara said without commentary. And Adi Shankaracharya is very clear that even among those who have achieved the highest realization but remain embodied, they have these afflictions and the possibility of enjoyments. I mean, at the end of his life, in the last 4 years of his life, Sri Ramakrishna had both enjoyments. He loved to dance and sing and be with the devotees. He also liked ice cream. Ice cream was new in those days. He liked jalebis. And he died of throat cancer, for which there was no effective treatment at all in those days. His body, was consumed by that cancer. So, do these samskaras afflict us? Why did Sri Ramakrishna have samskaras? Because they were assumed as he took responsibility for the karma of others. Particularly, he pointed out himself, of Girish Ghosh. It isn't as if he had, as the avatar, he had any pre-existing samskaras. But it arose for him because of what he had taken on of others. But if you look at the lives of all of those who came with him, even the Ishwarakotis, such as Vivekananda, their bodies became disabled. I mean, Vivekananda was quite disabled in the year in which he passed out of the body. Any other questions or comments?
So the intensity of spiritual practice, achieving that concentration, meditation, that's more for realization.
No, dear. No. It's so that we disentangle ourselves from the world. It's so that we can be fit for liberation. Sri Ramakrishna says, I'm not loath to grant liberation. Sri Krishna says, I'm not loath to grant liberation. Jesus says, I'm not loath to grant salvation, liberation, same thing. No, realization, as I said, that is a very high state indeed. And very few of us are going to achieve it in this lifetime. But achieving liberation, yes, we certainly can achieve liberation. And then go on to it's called the solar path. We take the solar path, which leads to the abode of the saints, rather than the lunar path, which is the path of the fathers, of the Pitris. And so the intensity of our spiritual practice brings us to Savikalpa Samadhi, and makes our prayer for liberation very powerful. Because we are showing, by the way we're living, that we no longer care to be entangled in relative existence. So this business of realization, Swayam, kind of put it out of your mind. It's not a matter of concern for us at this point. As Swami Prabhavananda used to say to people who wanted to talk about nirvikalpa samadhi or realization, he would say, well, first achieve savikalpa samadhi, then we'll talk about nirvikalpa samadhi. We have achieved a great deal if we achieve savikalpa samadhi. Just to review, savikalpa samadhi is that state of being. It is an experience. It is still within relative existence. That is to say, there is the experience, there is the experienced, and the experiencer. It's still within Maya, very high form of Maya, very high form of Vidya Maya, the aspect of Maya that leads us to higher and higher states. Savikalpa samadhi is that state of experience in which there is nothing else in our awareness but the divine presence, however it arises for us. And there is no limit to the number of ways it may arise for us. It will suit itself, so to speak, Sri Ramakrishna says, to the love and the desire of the devotee. But the characteristic is that's all that is in your awareness in those moments. And you know, not think, not surmise, not reason your way to, you simply know that you are part of that divine presence. But because it is still an experience, there's just that tiny bit of separation. You don't become one with it, which is nirvikalpa samadhi. But don't fret about that at all. To have savikalpa samadhi is devoutly to be wished, as my grandmother used to say. She didn't say it about savikalpa samadhi. She said it about being united in spirit with Christ.
But if we try our best and do not even get Savikalpa Samadhi, but have prayed earnestly for liberation, we can still.
What will happen is it will be granted as you leave the body. This is what the promise of the Ramakrishna Order Swamis is. It will be granted as you leave the body.
Okay, thank you.
But don't fret about it. Live in expectation that it will happen. You don't know how close you are, dear. You have no idea what drew you to this. Don't be discouraged by the fact that, desires and distractions still exist. As I pointed out, they exist even for the illumined, as long as they are in the body. And it isn't I who pointed that out, it is Adi Shankaracharya, which is, way above my paycheck. But there it is. That's what he says. But I believe it. I cleave to it.
Thank you.
Anything else, dears? Now, we must never be discouraged. Just keep on keeping on. Be undauntable. Be unstoppable. You do not get to your destination by stopping. You may take a detour. You may be delayed. But keep on keeping on. As that old spiritual says, that gospel spiritual says, hold on to that plow, hold on, hold on. Hold on to that plow, hold on. Anything else, dears? So going on with what Swami Vivekananda says, here comes a very interesting question. That question which is generally known as the reincarnation of the soul. Sometimes people get frightened at the idea. And superstition is so strong that thinking men even believe that they are the outcome of nothing. And then, with the greatest logic, try to deduce the theory that although they have come out of zero, they will be eternal ever afterwards. Those that come out of zero will certainly have to go back to zero. Neither you nor I nor anyone present has come out of zero, nor will go back to zero. We have been existing eternally and will exist, and there is no power under the sun there is no power under the sun or above the sun which can undo your or my existence or send us back to zero. Now, this idea of reincarnation is not only not a frightening idea, but is most essential for the normal well-being of the human race. It is the only logical conclusion that thoughtful men can arrive at. If you are going to exist in eternity hereafter, it must be that you have existed through eternity in the past. It cannot be otherwise. I will try to answer a few objections that are generally brought against the theory of reincarnation. Although many of you will think they are very silly objections, still we have to answer them, for sometimes we find that the most thoughtful men are ready to advance the silliest ideas. Well has it been said that there never was an idea so absurd that it could not find philosophers to defend it. I'm going to repeat that. Well, it has been said that there never was an idea so absurd that it did not find philosophers to defend it. The first objection to reincarnation is, why do we not remember our past? Do we remember all our past in this life? How many of you remember what you did when you were babies? None of you remember your early childhood, and if upon memory depends your existence, then this argument proves that you did not exist as babies because you do not remember your babyhood. It is simply what is that? Oh, unmitigated.
Unmitigated.
It is simply unmitigated nonsense to say that our existence depends on our remembering it. Why should we remember the past? That brain is gone, broken into pieces. and a new brain has been manufactured. And let's be clear about that. That which was as that past being is all gone. This is one of the reasons for cremation. Nothing remains but this little 3-pound heap of ashes. One cannot say that it is any longer a human being. And so, having been cremated, it's completely broken into its constituent elements. And a new body, and therefore new brain, has been manufactured. What has come to this brain is the resultant, the sum total of the impressions acquired in our past, with which the mind has come to inhabit a new body. I, as I stand here, am the effect, the result of all the infinite past which is tacked onto me. I, as I stand here, am the effect, the result of all the infinite past which is tacked onto me. And why is it necessary for me to remember the past, remember all the past? When a great ancient sage, a seer, or a prophet of old, who came face to face with the truth, says something, these modern men stand up and say, oh, he was a fool. But just use another name, Huxley says it, or Tyndall, then it must be true. And they take it for granted. In place of ancient superstitions, they have erected modern superstitions. In place of the old popes of religion, they have installed modern popes of science. So we see that this objection as to memory is not valid, and that it is about the only serious objection that is raised against the theory. Although we have seen that it is not necessary for the theory that there shall be the memory of past lives, yet at the same time, we are in a position to assert that there are instances which show that memory does come, and that each one of us will get back this memory in that life in which we will become free. That is to say, when we achieve not liberation, but realization. That's what the Swami means by free in this case. Having achieved this highest realization, then when we return to the body, if we do, then we see all of this. And Swami Prabhavananda said that from his own experience, this was true. So we'll get back all of the memory in that life in which we will become free. Now, that may be that a life that is lived in this further existence, not one in which we are in the cage of flesh and bone. Then alone you will find that the world is but a dream. And this, of course, is Vivekananda's own experience, having, at this point in his life, been in the state of Nirvikalpa Samadhi twice. Once as the grace of Sri Ramakrishna, when he was still with him at, I believe, Kashipur, yes, Kashipur. And the second at Thousand Island Park in upstate New York in June of 1895. Then alone you will find that this world is but a dream. Then alone you will realize in the soul of your soul that you are but actors and the world is a stage. Then alone will be the idea of non-attachment. Then alone will the idea of non-attachment come to you with the power of thunder. Then all this thirst for enjoyment, this clinging on to life and this world will vanish forever. Then the mind will see clearly as daylight how many times all these existed for you, how many millions of times, how many millions of times you had fathers and mothers, sons and daughters, husbands and wives, relatives and friends, wealth and power. They came and went. How many times you were on the topmost crest of the wave, and how many times you were down at the bottom of despair. When memory will bring all these things to you, then alone will you stand as a hero and smile when the world frowns upon you. Then alone will you stand up and say, I care not for thee even, O death. I care not for thee even, O death. What terrors hast thou for me? That is obviously a quote from some scripture. This will come to all. So before we move on, we've got some minutes left. Yeah, we've got 8 minutes left. So let's see if there are any comments or questions about what the Swami has said about reincarnation, the objections to reincarnation, and the results of having the full realization of your true original nature. And so anything at all from anyone?
Brother Shankara, Somesh here.
Yes, Somesh.
Yes. The word mind has different meanings in, when we go to Sanskrit or Hindi. So, but here it says that what has come to this brain is the resultant, the sum total of the impressions acquired in our past with which the mind has come to inhabit the new body. So that means the mind will also go along with, to the new body.
Yes.
Mind.
The mind, the intellect, and the causal body. Those three sheaths, we leave behind the food body and the energy body, the Annamaya Kosha and the Pranamaya Kosha. What transmigrates is the mind with all of its subtle impressions, and the intellect, or buddhi, the discriminating power, which we can know as children as our conscience, and then that causal body, that first and perfect reflection. It may get distorted as it comes up through the intellect and the mind, and definitely can get distorted by the desires of the energy body and the food body. But that causal body, or inmost sheath, it is a perfect reflection.
Mm-hmm.
So those three things transmigrate and take a new body. That's what we're told. And it's effortless. It isn't something that you have to do.
Mhm.
It is as the result of your desires for continued experience of relative existence. That's what produces the effect. The cause is the desires that you have for continued experience of relative existence. The effect is a new body.
Mhm.
And it is the Atman. It is the Atman itself, Saguna Atman, the Atman with attributes, that is the desiring.
Okay. So, like as a child, does child have intellect of like, you know, of a grown man? Then? Or it's just,
Does the child have an intellect of a grown man?
yeah.
But of course not.
So then,
We manifest these three. We take a new food body and a new energy body, and over the years, we manifest the effects that are caused by those subtle impressions that are left in the mind body.
Mhm.
And if we didn't have a full manifestation of our intellect in our last lifetime, and having a full manifestation of the intellect or buddhi is a high state, it will result in savikalpa samadhi. So if we didn't have that in our last lifetime, we won't have it automatically in the new lifetime. We will move forward until we come to the point where we left off. And then we start anew. And this is why, in many of us, I am assuming all of us who are here this evening, something awakened in us and said, wait a minute, I think I may have had enough of this. So what is the way? How do I find my way home? And so we're listening to Swami Vivekananda. We listen to these other great saints and sages, and we look into ourselves and say, what do I find here? What do I find here? And slowly we see, if we practice contemplation, if we practice introspection, turning our attention from the outside world to the world within us. And it's a whole body business. It's not just the mind, it's not just the heart, it's the whole. This is what's meant by Patanjali's use of the word pratyahara, withdrawal from the senses and turning our attention inside. We can use the words contemplation, concentration, and meditation. But as we do that, as we turn away from our entanglement and distraction with what is outside of us, or seems to be outside of us, and turn to what is inside of us, we discover there is a whole other realm, a whole other way of knowing and being that we only had hints and allegations of in our waking state. So we begin to practice yoga nidra, yoga sleep, where we turn away from our waking awareness and go into a kind of yoga awareness. And we do this by practicing first contemplation and prayer, and then concentration on that which we have decided or have been instructed to concentrate on. And then, as our ability to concentrate is perfected, we find that we enter the state of meditation. And it is known in the scriptures of the world and around the world as the Great Silence. And there we find just what the Swami was talking about here. Does that get it, Somesh?
Yes. I think I need to contemplate on that.
Well, that's exactly what we all need to do, yes. The outside world is just one level of existence. What seems to be outside of us, which is actually a projection by the gunas of what is inside of us, those samskaras, those mental impressions. But nevertheless, we know name and form, and so we make our own universe of name and form, much of which we can share. But each of us is unique, nevertheless, very, very much so. So, when we decide that this world outside is bound by all sorts of limitations, I'm told by the saints, the sages, the seers, the wise ones, that there is another way of being, another realm of existence within. And the more I explore it, the less limitation I will find. Less limitation equals greater happiness. It is just as provable as the experiments in a chemistry book. If you take a chemistry book and go into the laboratory and do what's said, you will achieve the results. The same is true of turning within and following the path deeper and deeper into yourself. Anything else from anyone?
So, Brother Shankara, these impressions in the subtle body, do they just keep on going from one birth to another birth until the last birth? Or do they ever
Yes.
get deleted or changed? Or
Well, it's said that they lose their power over us in the experience of savikalpa samadhi. They are said to be burnt to ashes in the fire of knowledge, in the final realization. But all of those are just words to us, dear, that last, what it means to be burnt to ashes. But we can know that as we dive deeper in the realm of our inner being, we see that these things that seemed so powerful to us before no longer seem so powerful. And we spontaneously begin to change our behavior. We don't have to will it. We have to will to do our practice. But if we do our practice, we spontaneously change because we find other, more powerful values. This is what Patanjali means when he says, substitute the lower samskaras with higher samskaras. And he goes into some detail about what he means by that. And of course, that's exactly what the yamas and niyamas are all about. The yamas are there because we need to restrain ourselves from participating in those lower samskaras. Okay, having done that, what do we replace those lower samskaras with? The higher samskaras are represented by the niyamas, or observances. And there's that list of 6 things that are part of, and if we do it, it's a matter of actually doing it. This is an action and experience suit. We can continue to act in and experience the relative world, or we can turn inward and find a realm, a world of less and less limitation. And as we practice, we spontaneously change. And over a period of years, and I do mean years, we look back and we say, I am not the person that I was 5 years ago. If we're practicing our spiritual disciplines, doing our spiritual practices regularly.
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
Mm-hmm.
And this last paragraph that we just read is just so powerful, especially that last sentence. This will come to all. What a reassurance.
Yes. Oh, yes. Well, Vivekananda, that which we are, we only seem to be separate beings. We are that eternal, infinite, changeless being, Nirguna Atman. We have, as the divine being, created for our own purposes, as Krishna says in the Gita, this realm in which we exist as Saguna Atman. So we can purify that. We can make that a higher and higher representation of what it means to be Saguna Atman, which is exactly what the Swami's been talking about. And as we do, our behavior spontaneously changes, and we are freer, we are less oppressed by those unpleasant things that happen to us, and we are happier, but not in the sense of elation, in the sense of calm, contented, santosha. Santosha, that's the Sanskrit. Anything else from anyone? Well, I'm very happy to report to you that the cardiology team of Kaiser Permanente is really working to improve the health condition of this action and experience, particularly the heart function. And they're really busy at it. They're really working at it, and a lot of them are busy at it. I had a very lovely meeting with a nurse practitioner named Andrew Perea yesterday. We met for at least an hour, or maybe nearly an hour at least. And he went over all the things that are being done. And he gave me what it was in principle. And next Monday at about 9:30 in the morning, I have a meeting with one of the cardiologists who will give me the details in terms of practice. So I have the principles from Nurse Perea, and I'll get the practices from this fellow next Monday. So,
Thank you, Brother Shankara, for giving us the good
Thank
news.
you.
Really appreciate it.
all right, everyone.
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
Until next time.
Brother Shankara,
Yes, dear.
Naveen wanted to come and pick up mail tomorrow. What time
Say it
would be
again. Say it again from the beginning, please, dear. There was a noise nearby.
Naveen wants to come tomorrow to pick up mail.
Oh, good.
What
Yeah.
time would be good so we both can
Oh,
come?
any time in the morning after 10 o'clock is always good.
We will not be able to leave before 11:30. That's when the sitter comes from my mother-in-law.
Fine.
So
Come.
can we come after that?
Yes.
Okay.
It would have been helpful if you just said that in the beginning rather than ask
know.
me what the time.
I know.
So you'll come sometime
11.
between 11:30 and noon, yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, Mother willing and the creek don't rise, I'll be here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything else, dears? All right. Oh, dearly beloved, a flower at your feet for each one who comes to your open door. A flower at your feet for each one who stands by your open door and says, come to me, offering to break this world's chain that binds us down to ignorance, suffering, and death. A flower at your feet for each one who takes the path that you have struck through this, your jungle world. Om, Amen. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai, Durga, Durga, Durga. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be cheerful. May you have peace of mind and go forward in the loving and protective embrace of the Divine Being as our Mother and Father. So until we meet next on Saturday or Sunday, Saturday, of course, we study Swami Prabhupananda's Realizing God, the book, a collection of his talks. And on Sunday, the talk will be on Thou Shining, Everything Shines. And it'll start with a guided meditation. And then a talk, and then our usual discussion and questions. Anything else from anyone? Okay, dears.
Thank you, Brother
Until
Shankara.
next
Thank you, Brother
time.
Shankara.
Hari Om.
Jai, Jai, Jai,
Jai,
Ma.
Jai.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.